We have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity.
We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. As if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy.
Silence! The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it! My life has value.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature.
Don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts.
And now, Reality Rants with Jason Bermas.
And who loves you? And who do you love?
Hey everybody, Jason Bermas here. It is Reality Rants. This is Red Voice Media. We got a banger of a show today. In about a half an hour, if everything goes right and the streaming / radio / web TV gods are good to me, we should have Jeremy McKenzie on. And if you are unfamiliar with Jeremy McKenzie's story, one of our true neighbors to the north that has stood up to the authoritarianism to the tune of now being debanked. Still going after him in court. He had court yesterday. That's why we weren't able to have him on a Monday. So hopefully that's going to happen. We'll see what goes down in about a half an hour. But what I wanted to do out of the gates was kind of focus on this. And focus on it in the respect that, you know, these people above us, and really below us too, you know, Canada, Mexico, we have so much more in common. I'd say culturally, obviously, we have more in common with those in Canada. But now when you're on the Mexican border states, you know, and you're living in a Texas or in Arizona, there's so much symbiosis there as well. And it's on purpose, right? They want to get rid of as much culture that is for the individual as possible. And Canada, which is much smaller than people understand. In comparison to the United States, it's extremely tiny, right? But they share so much of our supposed ideals, and their politicians share so much of the inverted rhetoric that is going around about democracy and freedom and sustainability. And Trudeau is clearly on that agenda. He's a pretty boy puppet. He's gotten away with things that no other politician could withstand at all, not even close. Not anybody that was being honest in this wacky world, right? I mean, you literally got the guy playing dress up in blackface on several occasions, thinks he's Aladdin, okay, whatever. But the humdinger of a Who whistle, the Buster Brown, the one that should have just been all over the place everywhere and was barely discussed, was the fact you had this privileged, super rich kid in a video during his college years where he's not only in blackface in this weird, like, Grand Rapids, like, hey, we're at a summer camp, we're totally rich, but he's got a stuffed pant leg for a trouser snake that goes down to his knees and is the width of a wiffle ball bat. We won't even say aluminum bat because it's Trudeau and we don't want to give him too much hammer time, if you know what I'm saying. If you know what I'm saying. And everybody acts like that's okay. Can you imagine if somewhere they dug something like that up against one of these supposed alt-right figures, right? Because McKenzie, who we're going to have on, all I'm hearing, you go to the mainstream media, white nationalist, white supremacist. First of all, I would never advocate for anybody who actually believed there was a superior race of people. A superior race. God's chosen people. The best of the best. Just ludicrous. Humanity is one species. Uno species. Okay? And they constantly try to redirect this idea that since we have different skin tones and different features, everything has to revolve around that. You speak out against mandates, you're a bigot. You're a racist. You speak out against the fact that all of a sudden there's all this inflation, you can't keep your business going. They want to take away what's left of your gun rights. You're a bigot. You're a racist. It's that simple. So I got several clips here lined up, but I'm going to start with Tulsi Gabbard. And I understand that Tulsi can be a little divisive because some people feel like she doesn't go far enough. Others are disturbed, as I am, about her in the past advocating for using torture in the Middle East, right? And certainly not coming around to the facts of 9/11. Still, Tulsi was on the Tucker last night, and they were talking about the situation in Ukraine, the conflict with Russia, the fact that escalation is very scary. I actually have video of a death ray. Remember how I told you this thing is going to escalate, and all of a sudden we're going to see all these weapons maybe we haven't seen before? Now, this is something that's been utilized before, but certainly not something I was familiar with. And I think that that's going to escalate as well. We're probably going to show you that before we get Mr. McKenzie on. But let's break down this Tulsi Gabbard piece talking about our neighbors to the north.
Just when we think that it is impossible for our leaders to show any more hypocrisy and insanity and disregard for our fundamental God-given rights and freedoms, they surprise us yet again. We have Canada and the United States that are known throughout the world to be beacons of freedom, to be these bright lights of democracy where people from anywhere and everywhere, from every walk of life, no matter your race or ethnicity or any of these other superficial differences, that every one of us has the right to freedom. The right to free speech, to express ourselves, to think independently, and to even, I dare say, express our displeasure through protesting decisions by our own government.
First of all, there's no reason to dare say it. That's why we have it, because everybody that lived through time periods where things were dictated to them and they were treated as the lesser, realized it was inherent that we constantly challenged these officials at the top, especially when they were corrupt and exerted their power in a manner to strangle the populace, essentially. I just want to put that all out there, Tulsi. Want to make sure we're giving it a little gravitas.
Thinking this, we would all be wrong. Now, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in Canada has yet again very recently shown just how anti-freedom and anti-democracy he actually is.
We have a robust functioning democracy, and public protests are an important part of making sure we're getting messages out there. And
I love it when we have a robust democracy. Oh. First of all, this country, the United States, not a democracy, a constitutional republic, rooted in democratic values and systems that have been corrupted to the point where if you question our free and fair elections, all right, because they're run through multi-billion-dollar corporations and they're voting machines and we can't audit them, all of a sudden you're a bigot. You're a white supremacist, right? You're part of the problem. And they throw that on you. They act like you're a fascist. No, the fascism would be what? The privatized companies in bed with the government to ensure, I don't know, fortify election results. Right, Time Magazine?
They're getting messages out there and highlighting how they feel about various issues, but using protests to demand changes to public policy is something that I think is worrisome.
I mean, think about how absurd on its face is. Right there. Protests. I mean, so you want a redress to your grievances. You go out there and you protest, and you're doing so to change policy. That's worrisome. That's worrisome. Now, back it up to, they want to label people like McKenzie and others domestic terrorists. Domestic terrorists. And if you go all the way back to the Patriot Act and the definitions in there, they broadened the definition for sure so that they could make it into domestic terrorism and broaden it to the fact that really all you had to do was commit violence for a political outcome or suggest that there should be violence. It was so broad. But, the traditional view is actually committing violent acts for political outcomes. So that's bad news, Brown. You don't usually want to do that, right? We're not advocating that. But we sure are advocating for protests and civil disobedience. Not Mr. Trudeau. That's worrisome. That's worrisome in Canada. What?
Okay. So here we have the Prime Minister of Canada saying that, yes, we have a highly functioning democracy and people's voices, the Canadian people's voices should be heard and they have the right and freedom to protest. However, if those protests are used to demand change in government policy, then no, that shouldn't be allowed. Just in that statement in and of itself, you got to wonder how this guy doesn't see the hypocrisy in his singular phrase. That freedom of speech is welcome, just don't use it to demand change in your own government. Why else would anyone go out and protest? If you are happy with everything that's going on, that your government is doing everything just right, why would you go out on the streets and lift your voice? Why would you go out and protest unless it is actually to demand change? So this statement by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is very, very revealing, actually, about what democracy means to him, and frankly, how democracy in his mind does not include free speech.
It's an illusion. Just like the idea of what Tulsi started with, this illusion that we're beacons of freedom. We're beacons of freedom. Yeah? Let me know how free, all right, those Afghani, Iraqi, Syrian, Yemeni citizens feel. How free do they feel? Huh? With biometric systems and, outside governments just taking over and doing what they want. Is that freedom? Is that the freedom we've been striving for? And again and again and again, most people don't think it can happen here because it hasn't happened here, and we've had it too damn good for too damn long. All right, and that's why we've acquiesced. And the softer version of the United States, unfortunately, is Canada. I did the Union of the Unwanted last night. A few Canadians on the broadcast. I'll probably put that up, a 45-minute portion or so, over at the Rockfin and Rumble later this afternoon. Really good discussion. Definitely chimed in quite a bit. But culturally, it's not as embedded as it is here. So you start there. You start in Australia. You start where there's going to be less of a pushback. And quite frankly, there's less management because there's less people. And they've put a pretty boy face on it, right?
So the latest example now here, again, of the hypocrisy coming from the Canadian government has to do with Jordan Peterson. Now, we've seen other examples before, how Canada recently, they banned the sale of handguns. They don't believe in the right of individuals to defend themselves or their loved ones. We have seen also similarly how President Biden here in our own country has hinted at his desire to do the same. And so when we look at our own constitution, we look at Canada's constitution, we see further and further infringement upon our God-given rights and freedoms. Now, Jordan Peterson is the latest victim of Canada's prosecution against free speech.
And let me say this, I don't want to carry too much water for Jordan Peterson. And this isn't just shit all over the guy. But I think that a lot of people aggrandize him because he is well-spoken. He sounds extremely educated. He's saying a lot of common sense things, right? He called out the absurdity of what is truly a transhuman agenda. You know, they'll mask it, this is Marxism, etc. No, it's a transhuman agenda. And he did call that out very early and said he will not bend the knee. But it's not just Canada. And it's not just psychologists and PhDs that are being forced basically for social media re-education, or you'll have your license pulled. This is horrific, don't get me wrong, but we've seen over the last several years during this COVID-19 84 nightmare that, all sorts of people with, a doctor in front of their name, not just Dr. Jill. Dr. Jill, our hero and savior out there, they are gone after as well. And Peterson himself is one of these figures, guys. Let me just come up and talk a little Jordan Peterson. Where, I was looking for it before the show. Basically, he was praising some of the hate and lies stuff that was coming out in the beginning. Now he's questioning it. And I think that was on the Tim Dillon show. I don't know. I'm going to have to find it. It's not something we could probably even play here and make actual commentary on because we're on YouTube. And Jordan Peterson, if anybody follows him, has his own mental health struggles. And it's not easy out there. I know that. I know everybody has their own struggles. I have my own struggles. There are certain things that I do that I'm not in love with, that I would like to improve. I think we can all be better people. I think it's very hard to, achieve certain levels of what we want internally, right? I think depression's a real thing. But Peterson has been on all sorts of medications, dealt with all sorts of mental struggles as well, open about it, had addiction issues. And I get it. That relates to a lot of human beings, right? That relates to a lot. A lot of us have those issues. But, I tend to gravitate, at least in my opinion, to value the opinions of others that kind of have those things under control, at least on a surface level, right? They're not devastating their life to the tune of them going to rehab or publicly having to talk about it. Again, we all have our struggles. But I've always been a guy that's moderation, right? You have to be able to control how many drinks you have. You have to take personal responsibility for that. And this is the make your own bed guy. Now, all of that being said, do I think he needs to go to a re-education camp? No. Of course not. That's insanity. Insanity. So let's go back to Gabbard here and see what she has to say on this subject.
He is being threatened by a government regulatory organization, the College of Psychologists, and they are threatening to take away his medical license unless he goes through retraining that is overseen by them and approved by them. And if he fails to do so, they will take away his license. And what was his offense? Well, he said some things that offended some people. We're going to go to a clip now from a member of parliament from Canada's Conservative Party. He has been in this position since 2004, and he currently serves as the leader of the opposition in Canada's parliament.
So the Ontario College of Psychologists has told Jordan Peterson that he either undergo retraining for social media etiquette or lose his license to practice as a clinical psychologist.
And by the way, I've got a clip of this guy confronting Trudeau about his cronyism and basically looting the funds, just like all these criminals do. Looting the funds on behalf of what? This sustainability agenda as inflation goes through the roof through these consultancy agencies that, employ his buddies. Just want to point that, like, this guy actually does a really good job. It's about a 3+ minute clip, and Trudeau doesn't even answer the question, and he just responds in bureaucratic fashion.
This follows a number of complaints by people who don't like his online posts. One of which is a retweet of something I posted. Another is a criticism of Justin Trudeau. Now, it should go without saying that in a free country, professionals should not lose their jobs and licenses because they express a political opinion contrary to the licensing body that's mandated by the government.
The statement that he just made really sums it up, that in a free country, people should be allowed to say what they want to say without threat of retaliation or retribution from their own government.
And not only their own government, but the basics. They don't get to cut off your internet. They don't get to cut off your phone. They don't get to cut off your bank. They don't get to cut off your payment processing or your credit cards at all. At all. That's not real. Like, think about it. Do you believe in this country right now there aren't banking institutions that know damn well that they are banking with at least subsidiaries of criminal organizations, whether it be, Italian organized crime or South American, Mexican cartel organized crime? Legitimately, the real gangsters are the banksters, and they'll do business with anybody's blood money. But now they'll go after the little guy. So it's even beyond the government, okay? And that's why it's going to be so important to have McKenzie on in about 8 minutes or so. Almost 200 people are watching. Can we get 100 thumbs up again? Jeremy McKenzie, recently debanked, really goes along with this entire thing that Tulsi Gabbard is talking about. And again, talking about Jordan Peterson is one thing, and we should be talking about that. But this is going even further.
But that's exactly what's happening to Jordan Peterson right now. He received a very threatening letter from the College of Psychologists. Jordan Peterson may have lacked professionalism in public statements made on social media and during a January 25th, 2022 podcast appearance, which happened to be on the Joe Rogan Experience. None of these complaints are coming from people who were medical patients or clients of Jordan Peterson. They're not coming from anyone that had anything to do with anyone who was a client or had any kind of acquaintance within his medical practice, which frankly has not been functioning for the last few years, simply because of the fact that since he became a publicly known figure, he has been under attack by these regulatory agencies and people who are critics of the things that he is saying.
And I would also say this. I'm sure financially he doesn't need to be doing those things anymore, especially with the Daily Wire deal. I mean, if you're following the Crowder thing and the Candace Owens thing, and I don't follow much of it. My girlfriend sent me something that Candace Owens apparently said about it. Other than the initial stuff with Crowder showing the contract and the response from Shapiro, whatever. But I guarantee you that Jordan Peterson, who also spoke at the Trilateral Commission several years ago, is doing just fine financially. So, he's not really involved in his practice, not so much because he's become a public figure and under fire. I think that the finances of doing other things and speaking and writing books has taken him away from that. And again, with that relapse in his mental health and his addiction status, you have to again wonder if economics has something to do with that.
Peterson says, "What exactly have I done that is so seriously unprofessional that I am now a danger, not only to any new potential clients, but to the public itself?" It's hard to tell with some of the complaints. One involved the submission of an entire transcript of a 3-hour discussion on the Joe Rogan podcast. But here are some examples that might produce some reasonable concern amongst Canadians who care about such niceties as freedom of belief, conscience, and speech. 1. I retweeted a comment made by conservative leader Pierre Poilievre about the unnecessary severity of the COVID lockdowns. I criticized Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. I criticized Justin Trudeau's former chief of staff, Gerald Butts. I criticized an Ottawa city councillor, and I made a joke about the Prime Minister of New Zealand. Jordan Peterson.
And again, Jacinda Ardern, one of the worst of the worst. One of the petty authoritarians that basked in these undemocratic, unconstitutional dictates that, again, supposedly put us in our place. So with that being said, hopefully we will not have any technical difficulties here, and it doesn't look like we are. We have Jeremy McKenzie with us, and Mr. McKenzie was actually in court yesterday. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about really how this journey got started. And I do have to warn you, we are on YouTube right now, so there are certain restrictions for the first half hour. I'm sure that you are aware of them. You might be muted. I'm not sure if I'm hearing you yet, just to let you know.
Good.
Nope, yep, I do hear you. You sound great. So for those unaware of your story and those who may have just read some things in the mainstream media about how you're a far right-wing activist, you're basically a domestic terrorist, you're a white supremacist, how does this all come about? It seems to me you're just a Canadian that became extremely concerned over the past several years of these authoritarian dictates and measures, and dared speak out, dared organize, and dared challenge this system, and now you've been vilified to a level where you've been debanked. So, Jeremy McKenzie, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us where the journey starts.
Hey, Jason, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. It's been a wild couple of years. I've been doing this kind of thing for probably a while. Since I left the military in 2017, I started just as a hobby, just as something to I have kind of a creative outlet. I was always that guy in the military with the attitude and the 4 p.m. on a Friday before everybody goes home. If anybody has any questions, Mackenzie's raising his hand again. Oh, for God's sake. So I've always been that kind of person. That was the subject of a couple of viral videos, I guess, regarding some things happening up here culturally that I didn't approve of, and one of them was a massacre by state, not by, but certainly involving the state police, the RCMP, which is basically our FBI up here over in Nova Scotia, which netted me a spot on the persons of interest list to the federal police here for seemingly because they don't like the things that I have to say, and I've been under surveillance and investigation for my ideology, whatever that means, since 2020 and 2021. And then in 2022, shortly before the trucker protests and stuff started happening in Ottawa, they started with the the arrests and on after the media smear campaign that's still ongoing. And now the newest game we're going to play is let's try and pay your bills without a bank account game that the Canadian state seems to be wanting to play right now. So that's what I'm dealing with lately, and I'm sure I don't know what's next. At least on the upside, after this, there's just assassination attempts. I think I have to look forward to. So that's as long as I can steer clear of those, it should be. I don't know what else they can do besides take away my birthday.
Well, let me tell you what they can do. I see that there is a plethora of wood behind you, chopped up. This would lead me to believe, make an assumption, that you may have a wood stove and you like to heat your home based on that wood stove by gathering that. In New York State, that's completely illegal now. They've actually.
This is all green. This is all green screen. This is all pretend. The only thing in here is lithium-ion batteries dug out of a cobalt mine. It's all satellite, or it's all solar panels everywhere. I think there's only 20 or 30 children involved in slave labor to put all that together. Don't worry, I would never burn carbon. I would never, have an oil tank or anything like that.
And that's really the inversion of reality, right? What you've got going on, and actually you can see the stove in the wide shot, folks. Again, green screen.
Yeah, this is a 1860s Civil War coal furnace. This is just the last spare room we have in the house. So.
But you look at that, and that is the true nature of sustainability, right? That is what human beings have done now for millennia, since our inception, at least that we modernized. We've been able to take care of ourselves. We've created heat and energy through this, and they don't want that for us anymore. They want their term of sustainability, which is a regimentation of every single thing that happens in your life. They want to tell you where you can go, when you can go there, what you can spend things on, and how much you're able to spend, and really give you a time frame to spend it on, because they don't want you to accrue or accumulate any wealth. They don't want you to own a home. And you look like a gentleman around my age, maybe a little bit older, maybe a little bit younger, but I'm 43. And
I'm 36.
Oh, geez. Yeah, geez, you're a little bit older. Geez, I'm the old man here.
Yeah, you age twice as fast in Canada. It's the weather and the communism. It just doubles you up fast. It's like working in a coal mine. It just happens faster.
But my grandparents were kind of from this generation where I remember my grandfather would pick up pennies. He would talk about saving up, owning your own home, and that gradually through the 80s into the 90s turned into this culture of debt, where you needed everything right away, and no, don't worry, you'll have a mortgage. You never really own anything. No. And that seems to be the movement. You talk about getting into this in 2017. Well, obviously this agenda escalated over the past several years, and to the point where if you are finding a way around the system, if you're not beholden to Visa or MasterCard or on the state dole, they're now debanking you. So you legitimately can no longer accrue wealth and then, like you said, pay your bills in anything but cash, which they're looking to get rid of right now.
Yeah. And, that's potentially that could be the reason, because I've accrued probably $200,000 or more in dollars in legal fees that I'm not supposed to be able to pay, because it's, just me here, in this wood pile. Fortunately, I've had a great, excellent, very, loyal community and audience, that we've created up here over the last few years that have bailed me out. They've paid over half my fees and helped me with that. So that's been a big help. So I don't know. Maybe this is the new plan. We'll just debank somebody. But this has been going on for quite a while, as you said. I remember reading about Agenda 2020 back in 15, 20 years ago, and that very much seems to be exactly what they're doing. They're just really pushing. Canada's now leading the world in this 15-minute smart cities program, this initiative, which is really just the Chinese social credit system, which they've been doing since the 50s. They called it work points back then. And they're, paying all of these towns and communities money to start adopting the framework and the initiatives that are going to be required to do this, because they want enhanced data governance and data control and monitoring and surveillance. And why do you think they want to do things like that? They want everybody contained in these 15-minute districts that they've proposed, which is going to be horrendous for the people living there, but excellent for the corporate masters and private interests that are funding these initiatives, because that's what it's for. It's not for us, it's for them.
I did a video with Dan Dix of Press for Truth, another neighbor to the north. Just yesterday. It'll actually, I think, be released this afternoon or tomorrow on this 15-minute city agenda, and how they're really not even hiding where they'd like to go with it large scale via things like NEOM and the Line. Are you aware of NEOM and the Line?
No, I haven't actually heard of those ones, to be specific.
So it's not those ones, it is the one. And this shows you that this is a global agenda. And for those that are unfamiliar with the Line, they give it to you in this awesome virtual universe, and everything is going to be not 15 minutes, but within 5 minutes.
Oh, this is the mega city in Saudi Arabia.
That is exactly what this is.
Yes, I've seen this.
Yes. So this is an even larger consolidation. And don't worry, you're not going to need a car. You're going to have equitable views of everything. If you thought that you were in a big city before, no, these things are going to be as tall as the Eiffel Tower, and you'll be able to take your maglev trains up and down the entire thing in 20 minutes. And here's the deal. You know, I look at technologies like maglev trains, and they could have been used to empower our westernized societies and even merge, I would say, Canada and the United States much further. Had there been an infrastructure built 15, 20 years ago in this country, much the way Eisenhower built the highway system. But you see, that would be decentralization. That would allow somebody who lived outside of another state to work in that state and be able to commute there in 20 to 40 minutes. No, they only want that after they take away your car. And they don't let you leave a 15-minute walking area. So you have several of these cities now sprouting up, Alberta being one of them. In Europe, they're talking about doing this in Oxford. And what people don't understand is this all works into not only a social credit score, as you alluded to, via a Chinese-style track trace database system, but they'd also like to get under the skin and into your tumith with a carbon-based system that is part of that, and a carbon score. And you're seeing that also in Canada right now with these new carbon taxes. Can you speak on that?
Well, that's been something they've been doing for a number of years now. The farmers up here are having a hell of a time because they're constantly increasing, and they've initially pitched this, as they always do, as some kind of benevolent thing that you're going to love, you're going to need it, it's going to be amazing. Lots of words like green, sustainable, renewable, eco-friendly, this kind of stuff, creating this, with the green and yellow colors and tones and the smiling, happy people in the ads, and that's how you sell it. That they've been torturing and intensely trying to strangle these farmers in the middle class out of their ability to provide for themselves for years. And it's just so, if people even thought about this for just a minute, I mean, you mentioned this line city, whatever this is going to be. Like, for example, you've got these same people saying you need 100 million people to migrate to your country because climate change, it's uninhabitable. But also, we're going to build this giant luxury mega city in the middle of the Arabian desert. Much like Las Vegas. Like Las Vegas is in the middle of I'm sure you've been there. There shouldn't be a city here, yet somehow we've made it happen. It's to say it's uninhabitable. That's why everybody has to move to the United States and Canada. It's nonsense, and it's particularly probably prescient for American viewers, is what you guys down there, to pay attention to what goes on up here, because there's no other country in the world more similar to the United States than Canada. And as they do with advertising and markets, they test things up here first before they bring it down to the larger, showtime in the United States, which is when you're really going to implement whatever it is you've been working on. So up here, they're working on carbon taxing, or their price on carbon. It's not a tax, it's a price on carbon. They love to play these games with us like we're idiots. You've got the gun confiscation and firearms registrations and gun bans. They've banned all of that. Now they're working on legislation for hate speech and internet censorship that's going to take the voice out of every man, woman, and child in the country. Of course, there is only two genders, and children as well. They're going to take the voice right out of everyone from coast to coast, and it's just going to be state-approved media or nothing. And it's, there's no opposition. There's no one in the state up here that's even opposing any of this. They're arguing over surface level issues that no one really has any effect over and can't really, do anything about, and decisions that are being made far above their level. I mean, our own government, cabinet ministers are sitting on the board at the World Economic Forum and these, other gatherings across the world. So it's a facade. It's not even, it's pretend. They go and get their orders from somewhere else and come back here and implement it. And they're working really hard, and there's very little opposition, at least officially in this country from anyone in the state. And it's basically just, the state is dictating to us, to the citizens, how it's going to be. They're not asking anybody. Nobody did any votes on any of this stuff. None of the COVID measures, the lockdowns, none of these things. They just tell you what's going to happen. You're going to deal with it, and you're going to love it. You're going to have nothing and be happy, or else you're a hate speech terrorist, and we're going to put you in jail and deny you bail and take away your bank account. I don't know how. I mean, I don't recognize this country at all. I did nearly 15 years in the military, and compared to when I grew up, and certainly, America's changed as well. The world has, but it's I don't recognize it at all, and it's sad.
Well, it certainly is frightening at the rapid pace that this is taking place. And as you kind of alluded to, the fact there is no redress, they aren't asking the people. Politicians seem to totally be in the pocket of this agenda, one that is being verbalized, in my opinion, vocalized by the World Economic Forum. But really, there are others behind the scenes pushing this. They're more of a mouthpiece, right? So how do we infiltrate this system and make any kind of real change? For instance, in this country, when these authoritarian dictates are in fact challenged and then they are overturned via our court systems, some of the most egregious ones, you look at the New York State Supreme Courts, me being a New Yorker, despite the fact moving, when they first ruled, hey, it's unconstitutional to mask all these kids, you didn't have any rights to do any of this stuff, they've just got a form letter ready to go out to every single parent in every single district saying, we're appealing this and you're going to mask your friggin' kid up. And then just 2 weeks ago, you had the state Supreme Court again say, hey, these mandates on health care workers, totally and completely unconstitutional. And Kathy Hochul, the installed governor, all right, now won an election supposedly, gets on television just, again, a week ago, gets asked whether or not they're going to rehire these health workers, and she's flat out says no twice, and basically throws out the we can't get people sick excuse, basically alluding to like transmission is stopped. I don't want to say anything else because we're on YouTube, God forbid. Yeah. But we're at this point that even if we go through the process, and even if we get the ruling we want, appeal. No, F you. And I feel like a lot of that was kind of represented with you guys and this trucker convoy, where you were able to get a massive move, people out in the streets on the side, people coming to your aid. And finally, when push comes to shove, they're just like, we don't care. We're just going to start arresting you. We're just going to start shutting things off. We're just going to start labeling you a terrorist, and you're gonna bend to heel. Do you think that's accurate, and how do we get beyond that?
Yeah, it certainly feels accurate. I mean, they say a lot of nice things, but what do they do in practice? And again, up here, the supposed opposition government, that we have, has been totally arm in arm with the status quo, everything they've done over the past couple of years. And now they're going to swoop in and pretend that now that seems like it's, there's political points there to cater to these people who they probably assumed before, pre-convoy, that they're, as the prime minister said, it's a fringe minority of unacceptable people that are taking up space, and what should be done with them? Maybe we need to put them in camps, or, these things they're saying. They were all about it the whole time, and now they're just pretending. So there's very little regard, given to that. They don't care. You can have the biggest, we've had several of the biggest petitions in national history, completely ignored. The biggest protest and civil action in national history, completely ignored. I mean, there was probably between 50 and 100,000 people there in Ottawa at the peak, when I was there. And the size of the country, it's, 5-6 time zones. And for everybody that was there was probably 10 that wanted to be there that couldn't be there. Clearly, this is a massive section of the population, and they don't care. We'll just attack them out there, standing there peacefully demonstrating as they were. So the government declared martial law to trample them with horses and beat them with guns and shoot them with tear gas grenades and rubber bullets at point blank range and hit them with batons and all. Veterans, even some guys with their medals on, dragged them into the streets and put the boots to their faces and broke their medals right off their bodies and everything. Disabled guys that were blown up in the war, that I know. And that was the response, and they didn't even say sorry. Nothing, for especially a government that loves to apologize so much. I don't even think that it's. I don't think it's. At least in our situation, I'm not super familiar with how it's going in the States. You guys have kind of a different arrangement with states' rights and so on. You can go from one state to another, and things can be very, very different. Up here,
which they are.
We don't even have a Florida, like you guys,
Florida's overrated, bro. That's the thing. You can't, and that's the other thing, that's why I always like talking.
Oklahoma, Idaho,
seriously, those are the real deal. Like, and that's the thing, even when I'm inside the United States when this is happening, I kind of had to see for myself, because the states they were kind of promoting at the time that had the most freedom and they were ridiculing were things like Wisconsin and South Dakota. And really, just the Midwest had a different vibe. Certain states in the South had a different vibe. Florida's huge. So what would annoy me about Florida is you would be somewhere where it wasn't as big and it was, no problem. But then you get into an urban area and you want to get some Panda Express and everybody's got a goddamn mask on and they're acting like, it's World War III. So,
coming soon, by the way.
Well, don't get me going. We were going over the new ray gun that's being employed over in Ukraine to take out, soldiers stealth style. Let's not get too far away from this, though, because, you're actually, aside from the debanking, which I want to get to, and how you wake up and you find out that I believe it's Scotia a bank, New Scotia.
It's all of them. That was the one that I had, but I've since contacted, 15 or 16 other credit unions. They're all like, nope, I'm either denied instantly or within 24 hours the account's been terminated.
Just fantastic. I'm just so glad we're here as a country or a world where, you can't get a bank account. Just awesome. You were in court yesterday. There are other charges against you via weapons, which they don't want the populace to have. They do not want, first of all, they don't want well-informed populace. They certainly don't want a well-armed populace. And they don't want a well-informed, well-armed populace that realizes that their country has been taken by tyrants and there may be no other actual reproach built into the system to stop them. So talk about, what's going on with you in these court battles and what happened just yesterday.
I can't get into it too much, but as I said, I've been, there's quite a lot of evidence to suggest I've been, because I have been targeted federally by the police and by, other elements of the state is, going back a couple of years now. So yesterday was just to set a trial date for one of the, several cases I have coming up later this year and into next year. I'm confident that, and my lawyer is as well, that we'll, defeat all of them. They're all weak and silly, and it's one of those things where if I wasn't who I was, if I was just some guy on the street and they, these complaints and things were made and said about me, they wouldn't bother. They wouldn't care. I mean, they've got a revolving door of violent criminals up here that you wouldn't believe. There's people stabbing each other to death on the subway every day. And it's like, this guy, there was a guy went on a stabbing rampage in Saskatchewan a little while ago. Just before I was hauled out there to jail with, on a national wide warrant for common assault, which is the same as if I'd spit on your shoe or poked you in the chest, or this is what they send a national, coast to coast warrant for, sent the police on a private plane to come and get me on the other side of the country, dragged me out there on the taxpayer's dime, denied me bail and kept me in jail for 2.5 months. I forget where I was going with that, but
that's good to know because people need to understand this.
So that's we're dealing with all of that, and that's going to be ongoing for a little while. And the point is, it's lawfare that the punishment is the process. You don't even have to get convicted, but you're going to go through years of this. You're going to spend time and money, and your reputation is destroyed. And the truth is still putting on its pants as the lie makes its way around the world. Before dinner time, and. That's the state of things up here right now.
Well, let's talk of some of these restrictive gun laws, because especially in New York State, there is a relationship there. New York State isn't like the rest of the country. It is extremely difficult to get a handgun permit.
Like Canada.
Yeah, very much so.
Let me guess. Violent crime is nearing an all-time high, or setting.
It's over the top. I mean, it's over the top there. It's over the top in Chicago. You've got the mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, dancing around. I did 2 shows on it yesterday.
I just spoke about her yesterday as well. I did my own. I like to call her Beetlejuice because I think she's cute. I think she looks good, and her policy of I particularly like her very strong leadership stance on the exploding crime rate in the city. Chicago, one of America's oldest and most famous, well-known cities. Hey, if you're getting robbed, just don't, it's like you're getting bullied if you go to school, you keep getting beat up, but just don't go that way anymore. Why don't you tell everybody, just don't use money. Don't have money on you and you won't get robbed. Just as simple as that. Blame the victim. Don't tackle the problem, which is crime that you have facilitated with your insane policy. Blame the victims for being robbed and suggest they change their behavior. That's, it's bad.
Well, we're in wild times because you've got, all right, just like New York State is beholden to New York City, and that's where they use this excuse to not allow you to have a handgun. You actually have to demonstrate why you need a handgun to protect yourself. That's
I live in New York City.
Well, like in New York State, you have to demonstrate like you have a stalker or there's some extra reason that you need this handgun. Well,
I saw a story the other day. A guy was just cutting people up with a samurai sword in the street in New York. I mean, that's New York. That should be the reason. Why do you need a gun? I live in New York. Well, very good. Here, take mine. You're not armed? Are you insane, sir?
You would think
it's
that's how it
nighttime in New
goes.
York. What do you want to die? You have a death wish? You can stay at my place tonight till the sun comes up and you're safe.
Illinois has now taken that model, right? So Chicago and all these restrictive gun laws, and now Illinois is saying, hey, you can't have these guns. I live on the border of Illinois and the Quad Cities, so I'm in Iowa. There are many sheriffs that have now come to the forefront and said, we will not adhere to these unconstitutional gun laws that they are bringing in. And that is another thing that is unique in the United States, and especially was seen during this COVID-19 84 nightmare, that the sheriff is an elected official, is actually the law, and can decide whether or not they are actually going to enforce what many people believe are unconstitutional dictates with no basis in the law. So that's why, there is a small barrier locally in this country if you know your sheriff and you can hold them accountable. Is there anything like that in the Canadian system right now?
No. We do have a premier in Alberta who's initiating some things that seem like they could be promising, the Alberta Sovereignty Act, and which is basically going to, from what I understand, enable the province to do similar things where they can, say we weren't involved in this legislative decision-making process on, for instance, the gun ban. This is what one of the reasons they're saying. So we're not going to do that. You don't just get to unilaterally tell us this is what's going to happen without any input from us whatsoever and expect us to play ball. We're not doing that. So you can just go to hell with that. So that's pretty much all we have. I mean, there's very little resistance around the country in this regard. We have a very weak gun lobby, a very weak culture of anybody that even wants to. You'd be hard pressed. Dare say it's impossible to find anyone in public that besides myself or people like me that will even speak about the reasons why why private citizens owning the means to defend themselves is important. It's not important, critical. It's like having a heartbeat. To a free society in this day and age. You can't just have going back at any time. The king used to confiscate all the swords in the village, back in the day, because he was going to have the monopoly on violence and he was going to decide what was going to happen and what wasn't. And you have to wonder, for supposedly, they say we're all in this together, and we're all. Well, why do you need all the guns then? Because your plan isn't to ban guns. The plan is to not have no guns, that they'll all be illegal. Police won't have them. They just want to have all of them for themselves. And, there's another famous, interesting line that says they want the guns because they're afraid that what they're going to do next, you may shoot them for. So you have to wonder about someone who wants to take all of the weapons and keep them all under them, in this environment. And these people who are incredibly corrupt. They're in bed with these lobbyists all over these corporate interests right now. I mean, the pharmaceutical industry is the most latest offender, but you've had the war industrial complex. There's a revolving door of big money corporate interests and government in the Western world. It has been for decades. That has led to just levels of corruption that are comical. It's like a dark comedy. I mean, all you can do is laugh sometimes. It's so out of control. And how long can you do this until the wheels fall off and people just say, enough's enough? Like, what's going to happen next? So we've got, they're trying to collectivize food. You see all these food plants burning down and blowing up all over the place. Governments, impressing upon farmers with taxes and regulations and changing environmental laws all over the place. They're bringing that under one umbrella. They're trying to collectivize food. They're trying to censor speech and control information and the thought processes and the information people see and hear on a daily basis. And they want to also disarm people at the same time. Like, I've seen this book before. You don't need a PhD thesis in authoritarian governments and the history of communism. You don't have to read Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago to understand what's happening. This is just the modern day, neo-communism essentially is what it is. It's the same model that the Chinese implemented in the 50s and the Soviets did and the North Koreans did and the Cubans did and all of these places. That it's been adapted and retooled for the modern age to fit into the new paradigm with social media technology and everything. But at its core, it's it's like Scooby-Doo. You pull the mask off and it's Mao Zedong. Oh, you again. I've seen this before.
Well, I think I always refer to this as collectivism based in authoritarianism, right? It's the ends justify the means, that everything must be done for the state and the greater good, and your individuality no longer matters. And that's why there is this mantra that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights was made by bigots and racists and the patriarch, because it's that perfectly imperfect document that a group of men, however imperfect, got together and said, shit's fucked up. We might not be able to fix everything right now, but let's have a baseline for human beings and then a system, whereas we can change this, right? We can amend the Constitution. So maybe down the line we can get rid of things like slavery, etc. And we can modernize. But let's not make it too easy. Let's not have an inherent democracy. Let's have checks and balances. And that's then also state and federal rights to ensure that we don't have this groupthink, this collectivism, where a state can get out of control. And all of a sudden, this authoritarianism is creating a massive serf class. And this is the battle against creating that global serf class on behalf of a predator class, in my opinion. We've got about 5 minutes before we go over to the premium side of the broadcast, redvoicemedia.com/Jason or /uncensored. Only $10 a month or $100 for the year, guys. Where can people right now, because you have been debanked before we go over to that side, support you or learn more about this, or at least follow you, so if there is no way to support you right now, maybe down the line they can find a way?
Yeah. The website's down actually today for maintenance. It'll be back up tomorrow. But all of my social media links and everything are there on ragingdissident.com is my website. I'm on Instagram, Telegram, all of that stuff. Telegram's probably my favorite. I think that's probably the leading, that's what everybody likes to use these days. That's where all the guys are. T.me/ragingdissident, II, the letters like 2. That's where I'll be. That's where I'm at until my last post before I'm disappeared to the gulag for wrongthink.
So since we got a few more minutes, let's talk about that, because you just alluded to the fact that you're using Telegram as social media. Certainly not the most popular, at least by namesake and user base. It is something that I have recently utilized and friends have talked about for years. I don't see this current situation with Twittergate and Facebook as so much the government telling these social media companies what to do and then them doing. I see of it more of a Trojan horse civilian system, in that from the very beginning you had intelligence agencies and assets embedded in these companies to set a narrative. And as they were able to gain more and more authority, as we talked about, and censor more and more, they were able to set up kind of this plausible deniability circle, where, hey, we did this because of this, and hey, this isn't the government censoring you. This is a privatized company that you can, buy on the stock market, etc.
Yeah, that turned out to not be true, didn't it? With apparently the FBI is Twitter, Finkel is Einhorn, Einhorn is Finkel. The FBI and Twitter, apparently, what's the difference? Facebook is another interesting one. If you've ever heard of LifeLog, was a DARPA project, a government military project. It was basically, if you look it up, LifeLog, the day that the project was terminated, I think Facebook was launched just days after, or even the same day, and it basically describes the exact same thing. So who knows? That's not proof of anything. As if they expect people they're going to have it like, oh yeah, there it is. Look, there's a document signed by the president that says make Facebook so we can spy on people. That's never going to exist. What you don't know can kill you, and the best you can do is read the tea leaves and get a sense of the environment and make a judgment call based on your instinct and the facts of reality as they are around you. And people don't want to do that anymore because they can't seem to make their own decisions or think for themselves. Apparently 70% of people walking around have no internal dialogue. They literally don't think at all. They just wait for the television to prompt them as to how they're going to react to stuff. I mean, they call them NPCs and zombies. They are. they'd sit there and they wait for their software, their firmware update, whatever the current thing is. We're Slava Ukraine today, or whatever it is going to be tomorrow. I think we've got justice for Floyd now. I think I don't know. Maybe we're not done. Maybe we need more. Whatever it is, they just come back to the box. The box tells them, what their opinions are on everything, how to react to everything, and then they turn around and go back to doing what they're doing. And we have this environment of like straight out of 1984. I read this as a teenager, and it stuck with me. It just seemed like a very important book, and clearly it was, because that's how we live now with the double think. People can think two simultaneously opposing things that don't make any sense, and insist that it's true. You mentioned it, it's for the good of the whole, the collectivization, but also individuals are important. Well, you can't have both. We used to value that's what made these places what they are, is that your individuality as a sovereign being was held and cherished and valued, but also that can also be washed away, and to hell with you and your rights and freedoms, because for the good of the whole, if it saves just one life, so we have to do all of this. But also you're a special snowflake and you're courageous and strong. Like none of this, there's no consistency anywhere. There's hypocrisy everywhere. 2 + 2 is 5. Up is down, black is white. It's craziness.
Well, we're about to be alone together and safe and effective on the other side, guys. So that is the cue to the producer as we leave Rockfin. Rockfin, look out for the Union of the Unwanted. Also going to be on Rumble. Rumble, thank you so much. Twitter, we'll see you on the flip. And YouTube... Yeah, well, I hate all the censorship and the fact you demonetized me 3 years ago, and you've taken